So welcome everyone to our latest episode of Stories for Healing. We started this project at the end of October, and now here we find ourselves in December, still going strong. Um, these stories are being told by storytellers from around the world and watched by story listeners around the world, 1,000 people a day, which is pretty amazing. It tells me that what we're doing here really has some benefit and is fulfilling a need. We tell stories about healing or transformation, uplifting stories. We don't tell stories that say, I'm right and you're wrong, or I'm good and you're bad, but we try and lift everybody up. And as uplifting as I hope you find these stories, I can tell you as storytellers, they help heal us as well, the chance to tell them. And so today we're very fortunate. We have a storyteller with a story for us. His name is Jim Hawkins. Jim, please tell us a story.
Sure, Jim. Good afternoon, everybody. The story I'd like to tell you is from a collection of stories I've been writing called Growing Up in America. And it is called Those Wonderful Dominicans, My Saviors. In 1956, I returned to Astoria, New York with my parents after spending 9 of the first 10 years of my childhood growing up on my Uncle Jack's farm in the Midlands of Ireland. Now, coming back to Astoria was quite a shocking experience for me. You can imagine somebody who had roamed his Uncle Jack's farm, no limitations, and now suddenly I'm placed in the middle of this concrete city. When we came back to Astoria, I went to St. Joseph's Catholic Grammar School. And going there, I was educationally, emotionally, socially lost. Because I was 11th grade, because I was 11 years old, they put me into the 5th grade. I had been in the 3rd in Ireland. In addition to being socially, educationally lost, I was also a lonely and angry kid. I did not understand why I was not back in Ireland with my cousins, running through the field and having fun and enjoying myself. But when I went to St. Joseph's, these wonderful Dominicans who ran the school came to my rescue and were my saviors. Sister John Bosco was my sister in the 5th and 6th grade. She was young and enthusiastic about life. Everything she did was enthusiastic. She stood about 5'6" in height, wore a lovely black and white nun's outfit, and walked with a confidence and certainty that what she was doing in life was the greatest thing for her in helping other people. She was so enthusiastic about life, sometimes we thought she would actually jump out of her skin with delight. She'd say to us, "Do you know about the woman, Annie Taylor, the first to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel and survive? And she took her cat with her, and she also survived. Or you must have heard about the Titanic, the ship they said would never sink. Well, it did sink in its maiden voyage in the North Atlantic on its way to New York." This is how Sister John Bosco was. She gave us her 100% effort, and she expected the same in return from us. She was very delightful in her comments, in her encouragement, and at the same time, she was very comfortable with disciplining us when we didn't do her best or we misbehaved. We adored and admired her for that. But the thing about Sister John Bosco, I think that we loved the most was her humanity. When we had recession out in the yard, she would put on a pair of sneakers, pin back her nun's hat, roll up her sleeves, and become our softball pitcher or the goalie in our hockey games or one of the 4 of us that played handball. When recess was over, she refreshed herself and went back into her classroom, and we continued to learn. Sister also noticed the days that I was having a difficult time. She would pull me off to the side, listen to what was bothering me, look me in the eye, grab me by the shoulders and said, Jimmy, it's all right. This will pass. You'll be fine. In 7th grade, I had Sister Rose Magdalene. She was my English teacher. I always thought Sister Rose Magdalene might have met her true devotion. I thought she should have been a dealer in a casino. You see, she loved teaching grammar and diagramming sentences. So when she got this part of the class, she had a deck of index cards with each of our names on them. And she would shuffle the deck. And then she would take the deck and she would roll it in a semicircle on her desk, wet the tip of her finger, and pick out a card. John Ferguson, stand up, please. Now, when we answered in class at that time, we stood out of our seats and we held our books. John, tell me, what is the subject in the first sentence from last night's lesson? Airplane, sister. Good. Verb. Has flown. Very good. Prepositional phrase. Across the mountains. Excellent. Now, with Sister Rose Magdalene, the more answers you got right, the broader her smile came on her face. But when you missed one, no, that's wrong. Sit down. One day, Mary Romanelli answered 21 questions in a row. I thought the laughter and the smile was going to jump off Sister Rose's face. But when Mary got number 22 wrong, she said, no, Mary, by this time, I think you would know a gerund phrase. But that was it about Sister Rose Magdalene. We might have got things wrong, but she always helped us to see what the true situation was. I also loved her because she was a storyteller. She told us stories from her own life, from topics relating to the world, and from her collections of her own short stories. She was wonderful, particularly with ghost stories. She was so good that many times when the bell rang and we were to move to our next class, we wouldn't go until we heard the end of the story. And I always thought many times, because she was aware of what I was dealing with, she chose stories that would help me to see things as I moved along in my path in this new world. And sometimes when I was walking out the door, she would come over to me. She would wait for the other children to leave. She would put her hands around me and say, Jimmy, you're doing fine. We're all very proud of you. Sister Mary Brendan was my social studies teacher. She stood about 5 feet 2 inches in height and was an amazing athlete. She also joined us during recreation period, and there was no sport she couldn't play, and play it well. She particularly loved to box. And if you wanted to learn the art of pugilism, she would take you down to the gym in the afternoon and she would teach. She would also, if you misbehaved in her class, she might say, meet me in the gym this afternoon. Now, Joey Gallo was the tallest, a little bit overweight boy, and probably the toughest one in our class. And one day, Joey was not doing his work and was misbehaving. Sister looked at him. Joey, meet me in the gym this afternoon. Well, we were all wondering what happened. Well, the next day, Joey came in. There were no marks on his face or anything. We said, Joey, what did she do to you? Nothing. What do you mean, nothing? She had to do something. She's teaching me things. She's teaching me how to box. And she's giving me exercises to help me with my weight. And she's helping me read. We all had wondered why Joey rarely read in class. So here was Sister Brendan would take him several times a week down to the gym, help him to exercise, and help him with his reading. And in time, Joey looked much healthier, and his academics improved. Now, Sister Brendan loved history. She had us memorize parts of the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, famous dates, personalities. She had me memorize the Gettysburg Address. I can still say it. And because she loved my Irish accent, she would have me say it on a regular basis. 77 years ago, our forefathers brought forth upon this nation a new continent, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Well, by the time I finished, the kids in the class loved this. Some of them were at the point of almost falling out of their chairs in laughter. And in time, they started to call me Abe. And they'd whisper to me, Abe, get up there and do the Gettysburg thing. Or, Sister Brendan, have Jimmy do that address. I have to admit, after a while, I liked doing it. It must have been the first signs of my desire to be a storyteller. But I also realized that Sister Brendan had me do it because she saw the joy that it brought to me. And she also saw that it helped me to loosen up a little bit and to see the humor in life. Probably my greatest savior of all was Sister Mary Kathleen. She was my mathematics teacher. Now, the world of fractions, common denominators, multiplication have always been a fog to me. So when I became an English teacher myself, I was very understanding of my students who could not understand grammar. They could not, it wasn't that they didn't try, they could not see the connection between words, just like I could not see at first the connection between fractions, numbers, multiplications. Sister Kathleen had my mother bring me to school every morning before she went to work. And she kept me after school until my parents picked me up. And in those afternoons, she talked. She would throw out one line to help me see something. If I didn't understand that line, she threw out more until I gradually learned and the mathematical fog gradually disappeared. In my last mathematics test in St. Joseph's Grammar School, I scored an 85. Sister Kathleen hugged me as if I was her own son. But maybe more important, in those afternoons, she not only taught me mathematical lessons, she taught me life lessons. She explained to me what was it like for me growing up in this new world of the story, of understanding the new lifestyle that I was confronted with. She also helped me with my impatience and my temper, particularly in relation to the other kids. And maybe most of all, she taught me about the importance of perseverance and prayer. When our class graduated from the 8th grade from St. Joseph's, the other students asked me to speak for them. And I stood in front of my saviors, and they all had great joy in their faces. And I thanked them for their generosity, their support, their understanding. I went on to high school, then college. I received a degree, bachelor's degree in English and education. And in 1968, I commenced a 39-year career teaching English on a junior high and high school level on Long Island. As often as I could, I would try to get back and visit with my saviors. They wanted to know how I was doing. And on the 10th reunion of our class, we were all there. And so were our saviors. And once again, I was able to stand beside them and thank them for how they had saved me. And they were delighted to hear that I myself was now enjoying the classroom and being a savior myself in trying to help other kids as they had helped me. And Sister Rose Magdalene, well, she was delighted to hear that I love teaching grammar and diagramming sentences. This experience and those wonderful nuns come back to me more and more as I age. And I've come to understand that all of us in our lifetime, and I'm sure we can all relate, we all need saviors at certain points to help us along, to see what is the truth in life. And I am most grateful to those wonderful Dominicans who were my saviors. Thank you very much for listening.
Oh, Jim, what a wonderful story.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Thank you.
You know, I could see each one of them. You didn't, and even though you didn't give a description, they were very, very real for me as you told them. I can tell they really made a tremendous impact on you and your life. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, had you ever thought you would become a teacher before this experience, or was that?
Well, that was. They were an early influence to me. Actually, at the end of 8th grade in St. Joseph's, I genuinely thought that I had a vocation. I want to become a priest.
Okay.
What I did was it was actually a glorified high school, a place called Middletown, New York, run by the Carmelites. And I went there for a year. It was very interesting. At the end of the year, they decided that James was not seminary material. and James, when he came home at Easter and saw all those lovely young women running around, they absolutely agreed with them. So I came home and I finished high school in a place called Power Memorial Academy. And in both Power and I went to Iona High School in Westchester, I had some absolutely brilliant teachers.
Yeah.
Just absolutely. So, and I saw them, and my reaction was, I think this would be a great way to spend my life. And that's what I did. I taught for 39 years.
Wow.
At one point, I took a year off. I had 2 questions to answer for myself. I had been teaching 12 years, and one was, did I want to go back to Ireland and live there where I had grown up? And I want to give up teaching and take a shot at an acting career. And I had done an awful lot of local acting and off Broadway in New York City.
Okay.
So,
well, it certainly comes through that you did find a great vocation, much more than a career for you. Yeah. And
I always say, Jim, I would do it all over again.
Yeah.
And
if I had to summarize, it would be that all the help they gave you in their particular fields, the greatest help they gave you was to notice you and to care for you and to
Yep.
inspire you to do the same for others. So
Yes.
yeah. Wow.
Right.
Well, folks, this is what you get when you come to an episode of Stories for Healing. Sometimes they're personal stories, like Jim has just shared with us, some wonderful personal stories. Sometimes they're traditional stories. Sometimes they're wholly made up out of cloth by the teller. But they all have this thing in common, which is that when we listen to each other, when we open our hands and our hearts to each other, really wonderful, life-changing things can happen.
Yes.
So I want to invite you to come back. View episodes every weekday at 2:30 on our Facebook page, or you can view them on the YouTube playlist that's posted there. But most importantly, stay in touch with others, listen deeply, and care. And it's all worth it in the long run. Thanks. Bye-bye.